Now, let's get straight down to business. Joe Biden and the Democrats think they are on a real winner with this whole thing where they declare, in the manner of Joseph Stalin, that anyone to their right is a fascist. But I tell you what, after watching the president's bizarre speech in Pennsylvania Friday, I think old Joe better look in the mirror. I mean, how can someone give a speech all lit up in red and black, flanked by U.S. Marines, where they look like the bad guy in a Netflix mashup of House of Cards and adult diaper commercial, and say the other side are the extremists? I mean, honestly, it looked like some sort of bizarre triumph of the will. But I tell you what, the 20-minute version of George Orwell's 2-minute hate Biden went on the other night was so bizarre, so divisive, and such an exercise in gaslighting that if you attached a pipeline to it, the whole thing could have solved Europe's energy crisis. This speech was demagogic, ugly, and calculated to foment dissent within America and push a fraying society closer to open conflict. I mean, right there, on national TV, Joe Biden demonized tens of millions of Americans as being the forces of darkness, the enemy of the state, and beyond the pale. Is this really the guy who was supposed to bring Americans together in 2020? I don't think so. Here's a taste.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Well, there's a lot that's not normal about Joe Biden, that's for sure. But yes, he did say basically millions of his fellow Americans are the enemy, with a blood-red backdrop and, again, flanked by those U.S. Marines dragged into this political stunt. A stunt-like bit of imagery that even someone on CNN said was too political. Yes, Mr. President, these are perfectly normal areas that you're in. There was more.
Now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear, division, and of darkness. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies.
Not in the light of truth, but the shadow of lies. I mean, this is dark stuff. This is Manichaean politics of the worst sort. And in Joe Biden's increasingly Swiss cheese-like frontal cortex, he sees the whole problem in America as MAGA Republicans fomenting division, while he and the Democrats choose the sunny side of the street. Do go on, Mr. President.
But as I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise. So tonight, I've come to this place where it all began to speak as plainly as I can to the nation.
Yes, again, at the birthplace of America, Independence Hall, Joe Biden tried to bring the nation together by accusing millions of his fellow countrymen of being violent traitors. Sigmund Freud himself wouldn't have known what to do with such a case of projection. Far from being the party of peace, love, and mung beans, though, let's remember, the left has a long history of weaponizing violence against its enemies in America. Think about the BLM riots, or the mostly peaceful protests that broke out after the murder of George Floyd, or the Antifa protests in Seattle and Portland that included sieges on courthouses and police stations, and the temporary secession of whole neighborhoods from the United States. Gosh, I don't know. That sounds a little insurrectionary, if you know what I mean. At least no one was wearing any Viking hats there. And then, of course, the Republicans and Trump officials who have been harassed in public even while eating in restaurants, all for having different beliefs. Again, very unifying and peaceful to be sure, though it is in keeping with what Joe Biden's old boss, Barack Obama, gave his advice to, well,
whether they're independent or whether they are Republican, I want you to argue with them and get in their face.
Yeah, get in their face. And speaking of getting in people's faces, the left had no problem with taking their protests right up to the steps of the Supreme Court to prevent Justice Brett Kavanaugh from being sworn in, or protesting in front of the homes of Supreme Court justices when a leaked draft decision came out revealing that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned. Despite these protests very possibly being in violation of federal law designed to prevent officials from being intimidated by a mob, and of course it also led to an assassination attempt on Brett Kavanaugh. But forget all that, because Joe Biden tells us that it is the left that is on the side of the angels. So what does it matter what the law says, right? And of course, again, if someone tries to kill a Supreme Court justice, well, them's the breaks, right? So I'm sorry, Mr. Biden, spare me the lecture that somehow it is the right that is tearing America apart or encouraging violence. Frankly, I think your side of politics has a lot to answer for on that score, and I suspect the American people will see through it pretty well come November.
Project Veritas, which we mentioned before on this program, they kind of do undercover interviews where they sneak in. Tell us about this latest thing. James. Couple of
shocking videos. I'll show you one of them in a second here. But basically, they've spoken to administrators at some very Tony schools in America. One, somebody at a private school, Trinity School in New York City. Another one, the assistant principal at a public high school in Connecticut, in a very Tony suburb there, talking about how, basically they're trying to remake the school, turn it into a propaganda factory, not hire anybody who has the wrong values. So this principal we're about to hear, he talks about how they won't hire Catholics because they might have more conservative values, won't hire older teachers because they might have more conservative values, all because they want to get into your kids' heads and make them think the way they want to. Have a look.
So then what do you do with the Catholics if you find out someone is Catholic?
Teaching them how to think. Mm-hmm. That's it. It doesn't matter what they think about it. If they think about it in a logical, progressive way, that becomes their habit.
So you kind of gear them to think in a more liberal way.
Mm-hmm. I believe the hope that the more progressive teachers are actually more savvy about delivering a democratic message without really ever mentioning politics.
So there you have it. They are sneaking politics under the radar. And this is why I think, I'm sure this is happening at schools across Australia.
Here.
And this is why you talk to so many parents, and parents say, the kids come home and I have to deprogram them every night from the garbage they've been pushed in the school. The whole thing when we were young and we were taught things like Chaucer and taught things like Shakespeare and taught, all these great bits of Western literature, was that the idea was that these were supposed to be universalizing things, that the great genius of Shakespeare was that he universalized human experience. And that's the great sort of tradition that, we sit at this sort of endpoint in. And of course, what they're doing here is looking at history backwards, and they're deciding that no, because Shakespeare doesn't write in our language and talk in our language, and because there weren't enough minorities in Two Gentlemen of Verona, and there weren't enough this or that or whatever that meet our own current standard, well, then this all just canceled. So this whole body of art, literature, knowledge, wisdom just goes out the window.
One of the most significant things I think we can do as urban dwellers and city dwellers is actually push as hard as we can to get our communities to be electrified. I will work with local councils and the state government to enable the federal seat of North Sydney to become one of the first true net zero urban zones in Australia as we transition to a fully electrified community. We have to do everything that we can possibly do to get to net zero as quickly as we can. I will add our voice to calls for the gradual removal of subsidies for coal and gas, and a stop to any new coal or gas extraction projects.
No, she kept very quiet about her investments during the campaign, and the reason it's belatedly come to light is the rule that MPs have to declare their interests. And now comes the spin. As I reported in the Daily Telegraph this week, a spokesman said that Ms. Tink purchased small shareholdings in a number of companies where she felt shareholder activism may be a way to both better understand the entities involved and potentially exert pressure from within to drive reform.
Yeah.
Some industries like hospitality are absolutely screaming out for more workers, and and I hear them, and I talk to a lot of people in that area. However, a lot of this just feels like a big, little bit of a sop to the corporate sector. Say, okay, we'll let you import some more migrant workers, but we don't know where they're going to live. We already have a housing crisis in this country. I think they've put a big prop underneath the apartment market right there with that, which is fine, I guess, for investors. But it's fine for big corporates. It's fine for investors. But the big winner out of all of this is the unions, because this is all heading back towards the bad old days of pattern bargaining across industries. And you know who that does? That does small and medium-sized enterprises. And I think the big story of this, frankly, is how you had the big unions, you had the big corporates, and you only had tiny little bits of representation from small business.
There was no small business. There was no small business.
There was tiny little bits of it. There was Cosmo, where they had one person
you mean
there.
very, very, very small businesses.
But I don't think that they're getting adequate representation right now out of their leadership.
I was disappointed.
And so what is happening here, guys? This is, Hawke and Keating. This is a return to the pre-Hawke and Keating days. This is a return to the day when big government, big unions, big corporates all work together to carve up the economy and screw the little guy. This is where the real disconnect happens between the voice and the actual problems on the ground. They already have a voice parliament. They have a voice parliament, 11.
11 of them. 11 great voices.
Jacinta Price.
And you may not agree with any or all of them, but they're there.
And none of that actually solves, and none of what they're talking about with this voice here, which is just about giving activists a say, would do anything
to help this.
Because the activists already have a say. They've got the Council of Peak Bodies. They've got all of these other, alphabet soup of organizations that are all making representations and consulting all this stuff. And they've actually, in many cases, only served to make things worse. If you look at the history, of where these outback communities come from and the good intentions behind them and behind creating these communities, it has been a case of horrible good intentions going really, really awry and astray at every single stage of the process. And so I don't know why we think that, if we just keep doing the same thing and entrench this even further into the Constitution, that this will actually make things better. It won't.